Hi, we're at the Maker Barn today, and we're going to talk about the Bridgeport milling machine. This is just part of the first one of a series of videos we'll do on the Bridgeport, and we'd like to just start off today with just an introduction to the machine. Later on, we'll have videos on the accessories that we have for this machine, the tooling that we have, the cutting tools, that sort of thing. We'll talk about, and also. We'll talk about work holding techniques and actually end up getting into some actual machining processes later on. Anyway, in this one, I'd just like to introduce you to the machine. This is a Bridgeport Series 1. We have a manual in our rack over here, and you're welcome to take this manual and read through it. However, you know, it's important that you understand this machine pretty well. This machine was built in 1978, and it's a Bridgeport Series 1, and it's what's called a 2J head. So if anybody asks, this is a 2J variable speed head. And I think the best way to start off with this is to start off at the bottom and work our way up. All right, down here we have the base of the machine, and this particular section right here is referred to as the knee. The knee works as a Z-axis for our machine. We can crank this up and down. It's 1/10 of an inch per crank, and it's driven by a screw underneath there. It's very precise. You can zero this dial and then read off on there how much you move. Always make your last move up. And the reason I say that is because if you move it down, you can have a little bit of a play in the screw and it'll fall down. But anyway, this is the knee, and over here on the side you'll see this, and it's called lube. And when you come up to the machine, you're going to use it for the day. Grab this handle and then just release it. And what this will do is this will deliver lubrication, whey lube, into all of the moving parts of the machine. It's very important to do that. And for a couple of reasons. One, to lubricate the machine, and the other is to keep the system clear. It's a very complex system of little tubes and orifices that allow the lubrication to go through. So anyway, that's the knee of the machine, the Z-axis. Moving up, we've got the cross feed and also the longitudinal. This is the longitudinal. This is called the X-axis, and the longitudinal the cross feed is the Y-axis. And they move, each crank of the handle moves the Y-axis or X-axis 200 thousandths of an inch, 2/10 of an inch. Both these axes have locks. The Y-axis lock is right down here. You can lock it securely if you're making certain cuts. Or if you have trouble moving the table, check the lock. There's another lock right here, and this is for the X-axis. So, and then on top of it is a table. Now this table is a primary reference surface for this milling machine, so be careful. This is actually, consider this a measurement instrument. And we're fortunate this mill is in very good condition. Much of the original frosting, they call it, is still on the table, so it's in pretty good shape. And so don't lay, we've got plastic on top of the tables. Don't lay tools or material on top of the table, but you can put it on top of the plastic, no problem. The table has T-slots in it, and the T-slots are holding the vise in position. Also, we have a set of, over here we have a set of various T-slot attachments. They're called step clamps, and we can get into those a little later on the operation side. On our machine, we have a power feed on the X-axis. We don't have one on the Y, but I can show you how that works. If I move this handle, the table will move in a direction that push the handle, so you can control the speed here, and quite often you use it for, if you push this button, you can move quickly. Saves a lot of cranking on the handles. So that's a nice feature. You notice this particular handle has a safety feature. It'll freewheel unless it's engaged. That's kind of a nice feature when you have a power feed. All right, now we'll talk about the head. This is the most complex by far part of the machine, and this is the real business end of the machine. And let's start here. This outer part here that's coming up and down. This is referred to as a quill, and the part that spins on the inside, that's the spindle. If I turn it on, we're running the spindle. The spindle has a taper on the inside that accepts R8 collets. We've got a set of collets here. An R8 collet is straight on the upper side here, but you'll notice it has a taper right here. Now, you position the collet in there. There's a pin. It'll only go in one way, and then you tighten it from the top with what's called the drawbar up here at the top. It screws in. When it screws into the collet, it pulls it up into that female taper, and it crushes these together so that your cutting tool that's in there, or whatever you might have, drill bit, drill chuck, whatever's held by the collet, will be squeezed and be held in place very well. There's other tools that go in here that don't necessarily squeeze together, but they're just a solid shaft that might go in there, say like the shank of a drill chuck, for instance. Anyway, it tightens up the same way. Almost anything on a Bridgeport milling machine can be operated with a 3/4 inch wrench. And we've got a little 3/4 inch wrench here, even this vise. But everything, all these controls are all can be operated with a 3/4 inch wrench, and that includes the drawbar up here. So basically you'd put your collet in there and then you'd tighten up the drawbar. We'll get more into this a little bit later on when we talk about the actual fixturing and work holding. But so there's several ways of lowering the head. There's the manual way. Now we can also use this device over here, and this engages the power feed. Now the power feed can either be run under power or it can be run manually. You can use this little crank handle, and you can also change the direction using this little knob right here. And let's see, we'll get into that in just a second. I've got it in neutral right now. All right, on this side of the machine, we've got, let's start up here at the top. This is a speed range. We have two ranges. There's a little readout here in the front. Hopefully you can see that all right. Right now it's on the low range it would be 120, high range it would be 1,000. With this forward, we're in the high range. So this would be running about 1,000 RPM. If I change this to low range, I use this switch the opposite way, and you see it's running much slower. Bring it to high range, bring it around and let it click into place like that. If you don't do that, it'll make a loud racket and it'll kind of shock you. It's not good for the machine either. Let's see what else is on this side of the machine. This machine, or this lever right here, enables or disables the power feed, and we'll cover that in just a minute. This knob up, this lever or crank up here is to control the speed. Now this should only be changed when the motor is running. It's because of the way the belt type transmission works. But if you want to go faster, so 1,800 RPM, or we can go down. In my experience, most milling that I do is run about 1,000 RPM, so you can get by with that quite a bit. Now let's talk about the power feeds a little bit. This machine has a capability of automatically feeding the quill at 3 different rates. It all starts with this knob right here. This knob engages is used to engage the power feed. Normally you'd operate it with the knob toward the front, move it toward the back and lock it in place. And that engages the gears to run the power feed. Over here on this side, you've got the amount of feed. It ranges from 1.5 thousandths per rotation, 3 thousandths or 6 thousandths. And currently it's in 1.5 thousandths. This is the clutch that engages it, and this clutch has a unique capability of automatically kicking out with the stop that we have here. And I'll demonstrate that. Let's see if we run this low speed. You see this crank is turning. If I engage the clutch, it'll start moving. Kind of hard to see it move, but it's coming down. It's at 1.5 thousandths right now, so that's why it's so slow. If I were to put a stop on here, engage the clutch, then when it comes down to the stop, it will automatically disengage. In the same way when you're coming up, this is a reversing, it's forward, in for forward, and out for reverse. You can see that the crank is turning the other direction, and just when I let it go up, when it gets to the top, it will disengage again. This is actually a clutch arrangement, so that if you did have a situation where it came down, say hit your workpiece or something, it would actually, you'd hear a chattering noise as the clutch disengages and re-engages. It's a tooth type of clutch. So the power feed is really useful in cases where you're doing boring operations, for instance, where you want a very smooth movement of the quill. So let me disengage all that. Basically just turn that off. And now again, we can manually feed, engage in the clutch and manually feed. That works good. And that's good where you want to have nice control over the feed, or you can even tighten up the quill. This is the Quill Lock, by the way, and I should have covered that a little earlier. And this will lock the quill into position and make it hard to move. But anyway, let's see what else we have over here. So that's the manual, and then like I say, we have a stop here. The stop, we can use either this little quickie clip-on thing, or you can use this nut down here. If you're doing production type work, you might want to use the nut arrangement. If you're doing like most quickie work, this is actually a much handier way of doing it. And while we're on this side of the machine, this is another thing that's very important. This is the brake. And as you use this machine, you'll find that you use this brake more and more because it kind of speeds up your work. Especially if you have a heavy cutter or a heavy drill chuck in there. Turn this off, hit the brake, and it stopped. You can lock the brake by pulling it over either to the front or the back. It'll work, and then you can pull it over. And when you pull out the handle, it'll lock the brake. So it keeps it locked. And one of the things that has made the Bridgeport mill so popular is its versatility, and one way that gets its versatility is from the movement of the head. Now this head is on a turret, and the turret can be rotated 360 degrees. In fact, in some cases you have a tool that's on the back end of the turret, and you rotate it all the way around to use a tool like a shaper head. Anyway, you can rotate this. It'll allow you to get to places on the table that you could normally get to. And it's not a particularly critical thing. There's a little scale right here, and if you rotate this thing, just bring it back to 0. Now the critical thing is the 2 other movements it has. One, it can tilt the head in this angle, and then you can see 45 degrees each direction, and it can also rotate the head back and forth this other direction. So you can do a very complex compound angle cut. Now, this is sort of an advanced thing, and the reason I say that is because after you move this, you need to go back and tram in the head to make it perfectly perpendicular to the table. If you don't, it'll be a problem for anybody else or whoever comes wrong next tries to use a machine. So, but anyway, it can be moved. There's these 3 bolts right here allow you loosen them up a bit and you can move the head. This is a worm screw kind of arrangement right here that's used to rotate the head. Back here, there's another arrangement right here. This is used when we tilt the head down like this. We'll use this back here, and then if we rotate the head about the center, we loosen up these 4 bolts in front, and then use this. Now, this head is very heavy. I can tell you that the worm gear that's in there is made out of bronze, so never rely purely on this. If you rotate that head, use this for the fine adjustment, but bump the head with your hand, control it that way. Now also, the whole thing can be rotated up here. Now that is not generally used, it's more used for if you're going to move the machine or something like that, you need to rotate, but actually this whole head up here would, above, the whole power unit up here will rotate. Anyway, later on in the videos we'll get into how to tram in the machine to make sure that it's perfect. But anyway, that pretty much wraps it up for this machine, for the introduction to it, and next time we'll get into the accessories that we have available. Thanks. And remember, this is always available right over here in the literature section in our shop here. It has all the information on how to operate this. It also has information on how to operate the digital readout systems and some of the other accessories that go along with this machine. So don't forget this is here, and you're welcome to make copies of it, or you can actually find copies of this online. This is, again, this is, you look for this, Bridgeport Series 1 milling machine, and this is the 2J head, the variable speed head. Thank you for watching.